Hey guys, we're here for the season finale of Invincible Season 1. Holy cow. I was super hyped going into this, and boy, I was not disappointed. So, what'd you think, Michael? We got a lot this last episode.
Yeah, so I think as far as the final fight, it was pretty faithful to the comic. I think probably one of the most faithful adaptations so far as the dialogue, and they did some inventive visual things here, which I mean, it was just cool. So that was really great aspect of the episode. You had kind of like the side stories coming to an end, or they did a really cool montage at the end showing where some people are going in the future, so that was really cool too. But overall, and we got a really good scene between two main characters talking on the moon. And honestly, it was a great episode, way to end the series for this season, and I hope many people are excited for what's to come with more Invincible.
Yeah, there's a lot from the comic that was, I think, adapted like pretty faithfully, and as like a reader, I really enjoyed seeing those moments. There's a lot of panels that were literally just taken from the comic and animated, so that was really cool. There was a couple of change-ups with how Mark and Omni-Man, or like Nolan's interactions went. There's a bit more, not filler, but just there's some more stuff thrown in there that adds a little bit more depth to that scene. And I think for the most part, I liked all of the changes they made in that moment. I think the only one that I really maybe didn't like the change, but it kind of has a bleeding effect later in the episode, is since Debbie's like in the control panel, with Cecil and seeing everything in live time, I think some of the reactions times, like from what certain stuff Nolan says to like how she reacts, I think is a bit off, or just a little weird. But then again, it's like I didn't necessarily need or want a cut to her, because I think some of that dialogue it would have probably what would you just call it, probably lessened the impact of that delivery if we've gotten like a bunch of cuts, kind of like when they do the title. But I will say, when they do the title card, I do love it. I don't know if I just noticed it this episode. I think I did, but I like how the title card is getting bloodier and bloodier as every episode goes on. That was just something I noticed, maybe because there was a lot of blood spilled in this episode. But yeah, there's what do you think of the adding different scenes for the action? Because they kind of, I think in a way, like they make Nolan's actions in this conflict feel a bit more, not closer to home, but maybe more great. Like you're down in the thick of like what's happening. Whereas I think in the comic, they just kept moving from place to place, that there wasn't really a moment where Mark had to live in the moment of what his father was doing. So like, for instance, like the train scene comes to mind. Like, what did you think of that?
Yeah. I think there is a, I'm sure the author had input on this episode. There is more like insight into what Nolan is thinking about humans and humanity and like the future of this world, which I think that those are cool snippets to have in there as the fight was happening. It does get brutal, but I think it's still true to who Nolan is, at least at this point in the story. So overall, I also liked the set pieces, and I think it did make the fight more meaningful that they didn't travel across the earth and they had more of a contained area for all of it to happen.
Yeah, there's there's some scenes where, I don't know, I'm really curious to see what people will think, because I think they gave you all the information that the comic gave. So if you really dive into what was said, or just, if you've read the comics, you'll know kind of the scope, or kind of where Nolan's coming from now. Whereas before, it just seems like he's doing this stuff because it's evil, and by no means is his actions justified. What he's still doing is bad and wrong, especially in our own morals and stuff. But I think they do kind of go over enough information, and through Nolan's dialogue of telling Mark about Viltrum and just how it works, I think it really does kind of not justify, but at least you have a bit more sympathy for the position Nolan's in, I think. And even when he's going around telling Mark that human lives are meaningless compared to them. And, like, Mark's like, well, how could you do this? I've seen you save these people. It's like, yeah, but you got to understand, like, obviously, like, Mark's not able to process this in the moment because it's a lot to take in. But as, like, a viewer, it's like, Nolan's had centuries of killing people before. And, like, also, like we were talking, like, or made comment of, it's like, yeah, he literally has slaughtered people on his own home planet, or at least he comes from a culture that did that, so it's like not really outside of the realm of possibilities that he has this stance, or at least it doesn't come to that surprising. But so what did you think of, like, okay, there's like one, like, I liked the overall position they kept in, that like they didn't get too involved, but what did you think of, like, the Guardians side? Do you think that was meaningful at all? Like, I get why they showed it because it makes sense of, like, why they aren't still interjecting on the scene, but as far as, like, them whole becoming, like, they're like a sequented or perfectly gelled team now. Like, I don't know. That felt like it was a little too, not cliche. I don't know. It maybe was just like, I don't think it landed the way it maybe was trying to pull off.
Yeah, there's one scene. So there's two parts to that. In the episode, the Guardians are doing some cleanup work, and I think that was fine.
Yeah.
I guess Eve is at their power level in the eyes of the general public right now.
Even though some of the general public does not know who she's talking about. Yeah.
So we find out later more stuff about her. But yeah, there was like we're a team now moment that was kind of like, maybe it's because we've read more material that, like, the team... I'm trying to say this, like, without spoilers at all.
Yeah.
The team isn't the whole focus of the show in the future, so I was like, why do I care?
I think there's another part of this episode that I'd like to talk about, but just finishing up on the Guardians point, because I think they kind of bleed into, like, the same problem, is that while I do think that it makes logical sense to have Nolan and Mark as a season finale, and I think they did execute that side of the episode perfectly, or at least in a very enjoyable sense for me as a diehard comic fan. I do think you can definitely see the problems with the surrounding story elements because this was shifted so drastically from its placement in the comic. Because there's things that they've taken, like for instance with the Guardians, that they've taken bits and pieces of stuff that happened early in the comic and then stuff that happened later in the comic but brought it closer to the beginning of the story. And so, I don't know, maybe it's because some of the relationships there aren't quite solidified as strong as they were in the comic when some of that stuff happened. But it's just interesting to me seeing that it didn't have the same effect, even though they kind of showed the same semblance of stuff that's happened so far to this point.
You can continue with the next point. I was just going to say, like, one of the key elements, or one example of this is, like, how, like, Eve meets the Guardians and she's, like, totally cool with them.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
And it's like, it's like been, like, a couple weeks, or, like, it hasn't been that long
I don't
since
know.
that guy cheated on you, so it's kind of weird. So, like, there is some stuff. But hopefully I think the majority of the remakes will be in season 1, and they'll stick closer to the source material in season 2 and so on. And right now it was not a major problem. It's just a kind of some awkward moments with the Guardians.
Yeah, and I agree. It's probably like just because they want to establish things and have like a cool beginning and end to the first season. It's probably what most of the shakeups we'll see. Because, like, some of the other remix stuff, like, instance, there's a scene where Nolan gets a flashback of being at, like, a baseball game for Mark. I actually did like that a lot, and I think because seeing a lack of certain moments with Nolan in the earlier episodes and showing more of, like, him growing a sense of humanity, and that not all of it was fake, or at least not all of the words that he's saying to Mark in this moment are completely heartfelt, or he doesn't believe them himself. I think that was a good direction, and that was something that wasn't in the comic that I thought fit really well in this episode. But let's talk about the other big negative, which it's not a big it's not a big thing right now, but I think because of the direction they go, it's shaping up to be a bigger thing than what it was in the comic. And because of what they did last episode, I don't know if I will like this at all going into the second season. But that was kind of the, I don't know, I'm going to butcher this word because I have a hard time saying it. The reconciliation of Mark and Amber's relationship. This is something I completely hated. I don't know about you, Michael. You can say your piece on it, but I felt like from where they were left off in the last episode, it just seemed like a cheap way to get a character of that seems to pander a lot into the centerfold of the story. Do I seem off place with saying that? I don't know.
Well, I think the thing that was out of place is last episode and this episode. I mean, like, they made it seem like Mark did something wrong by, like, not revealing his secret identity right away. And I was like, oh, I mean, that's fine if we go with that, but I guess that has to be a thing. I mean, his dad didn't reveal his secret identity to a lot of people, so I don't know. It was very awkward that it was like Mark's fault that the relationship fell apart. Well, he's like saving lives, but he's still at fault.
Yeah, but and she's like justified for being mad at him, but then she's like, "Oh,
you're a good guy now."
Well, it's like it's like the ultimate like, "Oh, I feel really bad for you because you went through this terrible thing," but it's like, why do you care? I mean, you don't really seem to understand the position I'm in, so like, why would you care that I'm in this predicament now? You know, kind of a deal.
Well, it's also that. I mean, it probably didn't bother you as much as it bothered Josh, but I think we're both concerned about the future and like how are they going to, well, it's fine. How are they going to break up or reconcile, or what's going to happen with their relationship in the future?
I think the biggest thing for me, it's stupid character writing for one, but it would be more forgivable if the character didn't mean that much to begin with in the story, because the character of Amber is not really that big. I mean, she plays a role to some extent, but she doesn't have like a big impact on the story, I would say. So the fact that they ended it kind of like in a there was a good break off point in the last episode, it just seems awkward having it to where they're going to continue it. Again, it seems like just a reason to have another character there.
This is since it's doesn't happen in the comics and it's purely speculation, not spoilers, I guess talking about the only thing that would make sense is if she dies here in the near future. Yeah. And that's like a traumatic event for Mark.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. You know what I was glad that they didn't do, though? I was glad when, because there's a moment where William and Eve both find out that they know each other, or they know Mark's secret. And I was really contemplating, because there was a moment that we were getting to where Eve reveals to William about her being Adam Eve, but Amber's there in the room, and I just thought it was funny that like they didn't go the route that Amber was like, I actually knew all along because I'm the master of knowing everything that people don't want me to know. I was glad they didn't. That's a joke, but it's just it was like because of the way it just didn't fit with like previously. I was like, oh, you're just gonna know this information? Oh, okay, good, you did. There was I was trying to think before we get to like the very in-cap thing. What did you think about the way they handled like Debbie, like processing the betrayal, or I guess the reveal that no one had for Mark?
I think we can both agree that it wasn't a focus of this episode. Like, they had her crying in the normal, which I don't know how people would deal with that. I think in the comics, it's pretty. There is stronger emotion, and I hope they get to that in the second season. But it seems like they won't. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I was really afraid when we first saw it that they were like, oh, they're gonna play the stereotypical like independent woman that needs no man type thing, and it seems that she has a very callous approach to Nolan. But I do like how they did sow the seeds, and they kind of imply that she's just being strong for Mark in his presence, and then she's obviously mourning in her own way. If they do that approach, I think that'll be fine. I'm just hoping that it's not like what I previously mentioned, but that was like back and forth. I think some stuff a little awkward, but ultimately got to a good point. Now we get to like the best in cap ever, seeing our boy Alan again, which you get the reveal of like the coalition of planets, what that might mean for the story going forward. But I just love like the down to earth like chit chat of Alan and Mark, and then him telling everything. It's such a great moment in the comic that I think was brought to life again perfectly in the show. And I do love, I won't spoil it here, but I do love how Alan does develop a friendship with two important characters, and I love that one of those is executed really good right now, so I can't wait to see the potential for the second one to blossom as well. But yeah, like you said, the montage at the end is also really cool because it does kind of tease everybody of what can be, a plot point or like an episode in the next season, which we do have confirmation that they were renewed for season 2 and 3. So that means we'll have a lot to look forward to in the future. But I don't know. Any final thoughts for this episode, Michael?
No, it was a good finale. I think about halfway through the show, we knew that this is where the finale was going to be, and that they had remixed it so that these events happened later. And honestly, sometimes finales can leave you disappointed if you know the source material. A key example of that, Orifreda, because we didn't get to it. No, but there's many examples that if you know the source material, you can kind of be disappointed. But
yeah,
they did the action so well, and the main theme of the episode was done really well. So I didn't come away disappointed with the episode.
I do love. There was one thing about the beginning part of the episode I loved a lot, and that was when Nolan is talking to Mark about like, hey, we need to talk, and like Mark's kind of in shock. I love that in the comic, it's like because everything about what happens in the comic is so shocking because it's so sudden and it just keeps going and hitting you with stuff. So the fact that in the comic, like Mark's just kind of like speechless and he just like can't believe what he's seeing. I like that approach, but I also love that in the show they remix it in a way where like Mark just instantly just like punches him because he can't, like he's so convinced that like no one's being mind controlled at this point that like there's just no other excuse in his mind. And I love that kind of shows like, again, sort of like the rage of Mark has, but also just like the love that he has for his father as well. I think that was a really good addition for the episode. But I don't know, there's a lot to discuss, and I can't wait till we talk about the whole season as a whole, because I think that's going to be a little bit harder to, I guess, put a rating to it. But I thought this episode was probably the best in the season, and I can't wait to rewatch it again. And if you haven't, seen all of the episodes back to back, then you need to do that, because I think it would be a really cool marathon.
For sure. And it's a long one, too, because each of them are 45 minutes.
That's true. All right, guys. Well, we'll get out of here, and we'll see you guys for the next video or for the season review. But until then, guys, Invincible.